Hot work on board a vessel is an extremely high-risk activity. Incidents can happen during welding and burning operations that result in serious injury to people or damage to equipment, the vessel, and the environment. Appointing fire watchers to work closely with the worker performing hot work and ensuring everybody is properly briefed and following the correct procedures are absolutely essential to reduce the risk of fire. This video guide will help you understand the correct procedures for carrying out hot work. Please pay close attention. As the worker performing hot work, or the fire watcher, you must understand the procedures and follow them at all times. By knowing and understanding these procedures and always following our life-saving rule for hot work, you can help prevent the outbreak of a fire. Fires as a result of hot work can start for a number of reasons. Welding or cutting near combustible materials, heat transfer, lack of vigilance, or defective equipment. Fires can start when there's welding on deck and molten metal or paint from the deckhead lands on equipment or other flammable material on the deck below. Thinking about possible heat transfer and the correct positioning of the fire watchers helps to prevent this type of incident. Fires can start because of faulty equipment. For example, perished or punctured hoses can be the cause. So, it is essential to check equipment properly. Fires can start because the right equipment isn't used. For example, for oxy-fuel cutting, you must always use flashback arresters fitted at both the torch and gauges. Everyone involved should be trained in the relevant fire safety information, equipment, and procedures. Understanding the basic principles of how fire can start will help you prevent fires connected with hot work activities. You also need to know how to deal with different types of fires safely when they happen. And most importantly, you must know about the fire extinguisher types and usage, and other firefighting equipment available at your worksite. Make sure you know how to use them before any hot work starts. 1. Pull the pin. 2. Then aim the nozzle at the base of the fire. Hitting the tops of the flame with the extinguisher won't be effective. 3. Squeeze the trigger in a controlled manner to release the agent. 4. Then sweep from the nozzle from side to side until the fire is put out. If you are the fire watcher, here are the most important things you need to do before, during, and after a job. Before hot work, you must attend and participate in the toolbox talk. This is essential for ensuring that everyone is properly briefed, understands the scope of the work, and is aware of the hazards. The toolbox talk is also the place to discuss potential stop-the-job triggers and SIMOPs, such as overhead lifting operations. Before starting work, carry out a full inspection of the worksite and adjacent areas, including underdeck areas with the responsible person. You should remove any flammable liquids, gases, or solids. Good housekeeping will help to avoid any incidents. Ensure you protect any non-removable combustible items and sensitive equipment with fire blankets. Wear a high-vis fire-retardant vest and suitable PPE, including respiratory protection equipment if you could be exposed to welding fumes. Ensure the correct type of fire extinguisher is within reach of the hot work area, and that you know what action to take in an emergency. You should have an agreed way of communicating with the worker performing the hot work, or his supervisor and the bridge, and know the location of the call alarms and their use. During hot work, you must monitor the worksite and adjacent areas continuously for any stray sparks, and inform the welder or burner when necessary to damp down with water sprayers or reposition fire blankets as necessary. Communicate with the welder burner and the bridge as required. And ensure escape routes are known and kept clear at all times. While you are on firewatch duties, you must not perform any other duties, and never leave the assigned location unattended during hot works. Firewatchers must also pay attention to the changes in the immediate environment of those conducting hot work operations, such as lifting operations that may pass the area, or an emergency occurring on board, and to alert the welder or burner of such situations. It is vitally important that firewatchers ensure that they maintain awareness at all times of all the activities going on around them and watch out for potentially hazardous situations. The rotation of firewatchers to a different location on a regular basis may be considered to provide variation to the role. After hot work, you must stay in position for a minimum of 30 minutes after hot work ceases, and continue to monitor the area until all involved are satisfied it is safe. Remember to carry out final checks as agreed, and to keep in contact with the bridge. If needed, extra firewatchers will be appointed by the person in charge or responsible person. In the event of a fire, use the dedicated portable extinguisher at the worksite. Your priority is to raise the general alarm first, before attempting to extinguish the fire, and then safely evacuate the hot work team from the worksite. To do your job properly, you must be aware of all types of alarms, their meaning, and the actions you need to take. Emergency telephone numbers, and the location of emergency muster points and alarms. You must also be aware of the type and location of all emergency equipment and know how to use it, including fire and smoke detection systems, portable fire extinguishers and fire blankets, fire hoses, the deluge system, and the vessel watertight doors. Make sure you know exactly who you will communicate with and how. If using a portable radio, make sure you know how to use it. Always check where the nearest phone is and what emergency numbers to use. Remember, always make sure you are properly briefed. Never tackle a fire unless you have the right equipment. If you are the welder or burner, here are the most important things you need to do and think about before, during, and after the job. Before you start, you must ensure a permit to work is in place for the task. This will identify hazards and provide controls for activities. It will also specify the correct PPE and RPE to wear for the job. You must also attend the toolbox talk. This is essential for ensuring that everyone is properly briefed, understands the scope of the work, and is aware of the hazards. The toolbox talk is also the place to discuss potential stop-the-job triggers and SIMOPs, such as overhead lifting operations. Before starting work, the person in charge must appoint firewatchers as needed above, below, and adjacent to the work. Ensure that all appropriate firefighting appliances are at the worksite and ready for use. Make sure that appropriate forms of communication are also in place and tested. The next thing to consider is the equipment you will use. For oxy-fuel gas-cutting equipment, gauges must be the correct type for the gas being used and in good condition. Hoses should have crimps, not worm screw type, such as Jubilee clips. All connections should be leak tested prior to use. Flashback arresters must be fitted at both the torch and gauge ends. Cylinders must have a key for emergency shutoff and be stored securely upright. Bulk oxygen and fuel gas must be stored 3 meters apart minimum A fire extinguisher must be placed near to cylinders. When working in confined spaces, such as tanks, gas hoses must be isolated, vented, and removed whenever workspace is left unattended. And do not pass cables and hoses through watertight doors unless they have been isolated. When beginning work, always follow the correct light-up procedure. For electric welding, cables must be in good condition, with all connections tight. Grinders must be checked to ensure guards and handles are fitted, and there's no defects, and they should be disconnected from the power source when not in use. And compressed air lines must have whip arresters fitted at all connection points. Remember, all welders must wear appropriate respiratory protection equipment at all times when welding. Once you are prepared and at the worksite, you should develop a routine for before, during, and after carrying out the work to ensure the highest levels of fire safety at all times. Before work starts, make sure combustible materials are removed or protected. Tanks and containers which have contained flammable substances must be cleaned thoroughly, and the responsible person must be assured that all are clean and gas-free before works can begin. Ensure adequate ventilation and extraction, and make sure all no-weld zones are identified. Confirm with your supervisor that the relevant fire zones are isolated. Ensure barriers and signage are installed and never set up equipment within 2 meters of the quayside edge. You must never weld to or cut into the vessel structure without authorization from the vessel chief engineer. During the job, always communicate clearly with the fire watcher. Ensure good housekeeping with hoses and cables clear of walkways. Life jackets must be worn when working next to the water's edge. And stop the job, isolate gas hoses, and vent during breaks. After the job, always confirm with the fire watcher and supervisor that the task is completed. Clear the worksite of all equipment and ensure it's left in a safe condition. And check the equipment, vent, and store everything correctly. As a welder or burner, remember you must always wear the correct PPE and RPE for the job and ensure all procedures are followed accurately. Never start or continue with a job if you or a colleague thinks that it is unsafe. By following the guidelines in this video, you will help reduce the risk of a fire incident on board.